Don't chew on that, Max.
Cooper loves that chew too.
Oh, now he's into Cooper's food. Wow, he is loving it. What do you feed Cooper?
Blue Buffalo Life Protection Formula. He never leaves a crumb. I love it because it's made with high-quality protein, nutrient-rich fruits and veggies, and wholesome whole grains.
Looks like we're switching to Blue.
Blue Buffalo foods are made with the superior ingredients your dog needs to thrive. Can your dog food say that? Visit feedbluefood.com to learn more.
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. A six-pack of abs? Nope. Six-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
New year, same extra value meals at McDonald's. So now get 2 snack wraps plus fries and a medium soft drink for just $8.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
Hello and welcome to Haway, the podcast. It's Martin here, and we've got a Q&A episode for you today. And coming off the back of the defeat on Saturday, and with the transfer deadline looming, there's tons to talk about. So thanks to everyone who's got in touch via X or via our email, hawaythepodcast, safc@gmail.com. We've got loads to get through today, and helping me get through these questions, first of all, is Gav and Henderson. Hello, Gav.
Hello, mate. It's been a while, hasn't it? Me and you. Can't remember last time we were on together.
It has been a while, hasn't it? Chris and I were saying the other day that it was quite a unique occurrence. And me and Chris run the same podcast, so I know you and Chris get on them together sometimes. But yeah, it's been a little while since you and I run the same one. We'll have to be you and Chris on the same podcast at some point before the end of the season, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, I made this joke before with Chris, but people will think we fell out. It's not that. It's just difficult, isn't it, when you're doing a daily podcast to get everybody on at the same time. We kind of spread the workload out. But yeah, maybe at some point in the next couple of weeks, we'll see. Maybe when we sign Dembele from PSG or something and there's a big news story, we'll all get together and chat about it.
If we sign Dembele from PSG, I will jump on podcast at any time of the day or night to talk about that one, I think. And also joining me and Gav is Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Martin. Hello, gents. I thought yous would get together for the FA Cup final preview pod, but yeah, Dembele landing on your side might be good enough to prompt a pod with all three of you.
Well, whichever happens
take us
first,
seriously,
Andrew.
By the way. Yeah, there's going to be somebody listening to this thinking we're being serious. He's not actually. This isn't a Roker Report exclusive. We don't know that he's coming or anything, but yeah, just imagine if he did. Something mad might happen between now and the end of the week.
We don't know for certain, do we, Gav? But,
No. Well, that's it, mate. That's it.
We can live in hope. Now, as I say, we've got tons to get through today, so we're going to start off with the news that broke. I think it was broken Friday night, didn't it, with Granit Xhaka's injury. And, there was rumours and speculation about whether he was going to be out. Then there was some people saying he was out for 6 to 8 weeks, which is the Sunderland code, it seems, for a long-term injury. But Andrew, we've got a question from Joe Braun about Xhaka's injury. And, what then happened on Saturday, because obviously he sat out the game. He was on the bench, as everybody saw. And Joe Braun asks, is it too easy to blame everything on not having Xhaka? And if we fall apart with the loss of one player, how do you approach the future? We can't become a relegation team if he has a long-term injury. And Elliot, we've obviously had a few questions about Xhaka. Elliot, lots of numbers, says, how are we supposed to deal without Xhaka for however long he's out? And Chris Day, at Chris Monkey Day, says, Xhaka injured, a 30 million midfielder sat on the bench. Why did he overlook him and play Trey Human there? Do we need to buy anybody? If yes, what position? So there's a few bits to pick out in there. But first of all, if we go back to Joe's question, Joe Braun, is it as simple as Xhaka being injured equals that performance on Saturday? Or is there more to it than that?
I think it was a pretty big factor. I mean, the stats Xhaka's been producing are phenomenal. He is one of the hardest working players in the Premier League. He's one of the most creative players in the Premier League. I think he's I think his stats are good across the board. So any team would struggle without him, and it certainly was a major factor in how things went. I don't think it was the only reason, though. We're quite strong mentally normally, so I'd be pretty disappointed if the absence of one player was the sole reason why things went the way they did. I really do believe, and I want to believe as well, that it was just one of those days where nothing went right. And if Xhaka is to be out for a few more weeks, we'll cope with it a bit better than we did. The timing of it's not great, admittedly, because somebody said there, do we now need to sign somebody else? I don't know if we do need to sign somebody else, but if the club were wanting to make a move for a midfielder, well, it's going to be a lot more expensive now, given that everybody knows Xhaka's going to be unavailable for a bit. And the question there about should Diarra have started, why was he on the bench? Had this happened a few weeks down the line and Diarra was fully up and running again after a long AFCON tournament, I think we would have been looking at a different situation there as well, and Diarra probably would have been able to play more minutes.
And Gar, I suspect that, if Diarra had returned from AFCON a week or two earlier than he had done, he would have probably come straight back into the team. And, I think Regis Lebris said Diarra had only returned to training on Thursday or Wednesday, hadn't he? So he hadn't had much time back with the squad. Was that as simple as that in terms of Saturday's team selection? That Diarra maybe wasn't quite up to speed and hadn't been back in the country long, hadn't been back with the squad long to step in for Xhaka?
Yeah, I think that's easily explained. I mean, he's a young lad. If you're being honest, yeah, he's fit, but he hasn't been a core member of that squad really since August because of his injury. So when you talk about like sort of the message the manager's trying to get across, continuing patterns from previous games and things, it's difficult to just chuck a young player into the mix. I think ideally you always want to just reintroduce them a little bit slowly and then get them up to speed gradually. And that's always been the style under this regime, really, hasn't it? We don't really rush anything. Like you joke about the injury length and things like that, but that is a symptom of just the way we do things now. We don't tend to just chuck players back in really quickly. They'll be given time to get back up to speed and stuff. So sometimes it's a little bit longer than we'd ideally like, but it's just the way we do things. But with Diarra, I just don't know whether it made that much of a difference really to the way we played. Like and interestingly, the last couple of times we've seen Diarra, he's kind of played more on the right hand side than he has in the middle. I think if anything, and this was a point that you lads made on the Sunday pod, was if anything it was Hertrauda who should have probably played. Really, I was expecting him to start, but and again, this is something I've said a few times. When the team dropped, I wasn't complaining. I wasn't looking at it and going, I don't like that team. So I'm not going to then sit here and be wise after the fact and say, you should have done this, that, and the other. I think, it is what it is. Regis Lebris makes decisions for the best of the team, makes decisions because he thinks it's going to win us games and get us points. 8 times out of 10, he gets it right. The couple of times he doesn't, you just take it on the chin and you just kind of go, well, it is what it is, I've been a little bit annoyed, and we might come on to this a bit more as we go through the questions, but I've been a little bit annoyed that because of one bad performance, one bad day, one bad set of decisions maybe by the manager, we're now, people want to delve deep on non-issues really. Like, Hume was an experiment. He's played in midfield a couple of times. He actually played there, or I thought he was really good against Palace on that sort of right-hand side. He's had more decent showings in midfield than he has bad ones, I would say, but he isn't a Xhaka replacement. He wasn't in this game. If anybody, Enzo Lafay was the Xhaka replacement. Enzo dropped a little bit deeper alongside Siddiqui, and you can look at some of the goals we conceded and just some of the chances we conceded, and there was this giant hole in the midfield in between defence and attack where you've normally got Granit Xhaka, and we didn't have him. And I don't think that's the sole reason we lost the game, but he's a big part of it, isn't he? Of course he is. I think we can all concede that. And maybe we needed an experience like the one at the London Stadium to teach us how to deal with that. Sometimes you learn more from your bad days than your good days, and that hopefully that'll be the case by the time we come and play Burnley. Regis Lebris will have learned a lot from his own decision making, the performances of his players, and go, yeah, maybe I should have picked Luttrell Hertrauder in there instead. So I guess we're going to find out next week, but I just don't think it warrants a major inquest into the decision behind that, because a lot of it's easily explained.
I think a lot of it is easily explained. I think some of it also links into the away lack of goals, which we've got a few questions about we'll come on to in a little while. But Andrew, going back to something that Gav mentioned there, and something that Joe Lewins has asked us about, at Joe Lewins, says, how do we cover the loss of Xhaka? Do we play Hertrauder there, who has defensive qualities, but not the creative qualities necessarily? Or do we look to bring somebody in? I think the former. And, we've had a ton of questions about the selection on Saturday with Hertrauder or Gertrude, however we want to pronounce it, sitting that game out. And it was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it, to see him not make the starting 11 with Xhaka being out, and then not actually coming off the bench at all. SAFC lad at Chris DI, lots of numbers, says, any guesses why Hertrauder wasn't involved against West Ham? He seemed the ideal replacement for Xhaka, or at very least replace Mukiele at right back. Because of course, Luke O'Nien came on at right back as sub for Mukiele, didn't he? Rob Ellison Davidson at Rob SAFC fan says, this is a slightly different question, but will we sign Hertrauder permanently if he can't get in ahead of Hume midfield? And Lex asks, if you were Hertrauder, would you feel badly done to yesterday? He seemed the obvious replacement for Xhaka, and he's never let us down in any of the positions been asked to play. Seems an odd decision not to include him. And Paul Rackstraw at Rocky SAFC says, others have mentioned it, but why overlook Hertrauder yesterday? I have full faith in Lebris. I thought we looked very weak centrally. And as Gav says, Regis Lebris is always going to pick the best team that he thinks can win a game of football. More often than not, in his 18 months, 19 months of Sunderland, he's got it right. And he's got a ton of credit in the bank. So you can kind of give him maybe a dodgy decision or a uncertain decision that doesn't work out, can't you? He's got plenty of credit in the bank. And as Tom White said to us a few weeks ago, trust Regis Lebris with the opinion, but never mind team selection. But it was a strange one to leave Hertrauder out. He's on loan. Apparently we've got an option to buy him. But of course that relies on him wanting to stay as well. And, I think he left his former club, was he at Leipzig? Because he wasn't nailing down a position that he wanted to play. So, Hertrauder, Gertrude, do you think he should come back in the team? Were you surprised not to see him in the team? And what do you think the future holds for him? Because it's obviously a big talking point for Sunderland fans at the moment, isn't it?
It is. It's a lot of people are discussing it. It's like we've got two players there, because some people call him Hertrauder and some people call him Gertrude. You never see them both in the same room at the same time. I wasn't too fussed when he brought O'Nien on towards the end of the game. I think at that point it was game over, really. And by that stage, maybe Lebris is even thinking, protect players who are more likely to be starting games in future weeks. But yeah, I have felt I'd like to see him getting more regular minutes. And as Gav says, it's important that we don't all start panicking on the back of one result and now start complaining about team selections after the event. But that is something that I've been thinking for a while now, because he is a quality player. And he might be feeling a little frustrated, because whenever he has played, I think he's been excellent. I think he's a really, really good player. He would give us a bit more strength physically in midfield if he was to play. Siddiqui and Lafay have both got their positives, but stature-wise, that you could perhaps push them off the ball or get past them a little bit easier. Their skills are elsewhere, whereas Hertrauder might make us a little bit more solid. As to why Lebris hasn't played him recently, I honestly don't know. I'd love to be able to I'd love to be able to put my finger on it, and I'd love to think that he does become a permanent signing because I really rate him. But as we've said, Lebris knows what he's doing, and the odd result here or there doesn't change that.
Well, just a point to make on this, really. He's played in 20 games. Oh, sorry, been in the squad for 20 games. He started 10 and he's been a sub in 7. So he has started quite a lot of games considering he wasn't brought in to start games. He's actually been, a pretty heavy feature in the team. In fact, he didn't start the last 2, fair enough. But before that, he started 5 on the bounce. So I think there is a bit of a danger of making an issue out of nothing here. Like, there seems to be a narrative being created that Geertruida has been overlooked. He was for that game and possibly for the Palace game. But prior to that, he was playing a lot of football. So, it is what it is. He's played quite a lot recently. I'm sure he's keen to play every single minute of every game. But the example that has been used, not just in some of those questions, but I've seen other people using it, is about 09. Why did 09 come on? Well, why not 09? He came on and played really well. He nearly scored. I know it was by accident. But actually, I by the end of the game, when I was clutching at straws for positives, I thought, well, actually, Luke 09 came on and did okay. But again, he's kind of talked about in a different breath, like almost like, well, we shouldn't have brought him on ahead of Mukiele and Xhaka. Why not? He did fine. Horses for courses, isn't it? Like, so yeah, I think we are in danger sometimes of just maybe overanalyzing things slightly, and that tends to happen more after defeats than it does wins. If Luke 09 sticks that in the top corner by accident, we aren't getting questions about why Geertruida didn't play and why he didn't come on ahead of 09. I don't think there's an issue there. Seriously, I don't. I think if he could sign for Sunderland before this window shuts, I'm pretty sure he would. He seems to be enjoying himself. He's playing in the Premier League. He's playing in a good team. I think there's no real issue there.
I think it's right that you point that out, Gav, because I'm perhaps guilty of falling for that narrative, and I hadn't realised that he'd started so many games so recently. So yeah, perhaps it's been made into something more significant than it actually is.
Yeah, well, not just started games, Andrew, but he more often than not, he plays the full match as well. So I'm just looking at it here. Chelsea, Everton, he'd come off a few minutes from the end against Arsenal, Fulham, Man City, Brighton, Leeds, the other Man City game, Tottenham, and then he started against Brentford and came off on the 79th minute. So more often than not as well, he plays like the full game. How many players in the team actually do that as well? So yeah, I do think there's a bit of a danger of maybe looking past that.
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you've got this lad who's a Dutch international who has left his previous club because he wasn't able to nail down a consistent position. As you see, whether we brought him in to just supplement the squad or longer term, I actually think we brought him in with the intention of him partnering Alderete at the back. And Ballard's form's kind of caught us by surprise a bit because Ballard's been superb. Geertruida came and arrived on deadline day, I think I'm right in saying, didn't he? So he came in late. So, he didn't have a ton of time over the summer to bed himself in. And his versatility in a lot of respects is probably acting against him. Why? Because he can he can play right back. I think that's his preferred position by all accounts. He can play a centre back. He's played in midfield. Those games that you listed there, Gav, Siddiqui was injured. At AFCON, wasn't he? So Geertruida came in, played in midfield in Siddiqui's place during AFCON, but he's not going to get Siddiqui's position when Siddiqui's available. So you've got this scenario now where Geertruida is probably looking at going, is there actually an opportunity for me to get that first team place, a regular first team place? And, fortunately, I agree with you, Gav, that, people maybe look for things to talk about and, especially after a defeat, it's probably natural. Given that we've got a daily podcast, it's pretty good that people find things to talk about because otherwise we'd be struggling a little bit, wouldn't we? But I think it's a really interesting one, especially like he played a half for the under-21s in midweek and he came off at half time, which kind of suggested to me that he was getting a bit of match practice in before the West Ham game. And, given the fact that he was, I was going to say overlooked, he wasn't chosen to replace Xhaka. Lebris decided to do something else. I think there was probably some other reasons for that, which we'll come on to when we talk about the away form. But, the fact that 09 was brought on at right back, which is Gertruda's position by all intents and purposes, when Mukiele came off, it does just put a little bit of fuel on that fire after a defeat. Look, if we'd won 3-0 on Saturday, we wouldn't have any of these questions, would we? Everyone going, that was a brilliant choice to play my ender. That was a great choice to drop the fair back into the centre midfield. So, it's natural after a defeat. One of those things that we've just talked about with 09 coming off, that happened when Mukiele seemed to injure his hand, didn't he? And he went off. And he wasn't happy coming off, was he? He seemed to have a bit of a rant and rave towards Lebris and some other members of the coaching staff. And we got a few questions about that attitude and that, those flare-ups, I guess. Tucky at Tucky the Weeb says, with some composure lost from individual players yesterday, and obviously this came in on Sunday, so we're talking about the West Ham game on Saturday. Nothing's happened on Monday as far as we know. With some composure lost from the individual players yesterday and out-of-character poor performances, is a little pressure creeping in, or do you think the desire to perform well is so strong? And Lex at SAFC_Lex says, given the fact our manager is the most laid-back man to exist, how come most of our players are ready for a fight at the drop of a hat, whether they're on the pitch or not? Reynaldo was lucky not to see red. Alderete was squaring up at people when the ball's in play. Mukiele's reaction when he was subbed, and the Xhaka incident, which we'll come on to separately as well. And it was a strange reaction from some players. I thought we kind of lost our heads, Andrew, a bit towards the end of the game. Is that just a symptom of the performance and the result and how the game was going on the day? Is pressure creeping in, as Tucky asks? Because those sort of things aren't... I don't think those sort of things are a natural reaction to not having a great game. I think they seemed extreme, some of them. What's your take on that?
I might disagree on that point, Martin, because I did think a lot of it was just a natural reaction to having an absolute stinker. Just thinking about myself, I get myself wound up like that. Now I'm cross and short-tempered when Sunderland lose, so the players are gonna perhaps be like that. That's perhaps a consequence of just having winners in the team who expect better things of themselves. I agree, though, with you in that whether it is a natural response or not, it's not a response we want to see too often. I do think it lacks a touch of professionalism, and when everything's settled down and the players look back on things, they'll probably be a little bit frustrated with themselves that they were like that and they weren't able to be a bit more focused. So I wasn't too worried. I think I'd perhaps be a bit more annoyed if the players didn't show any sort of reaction. We've seen it before where Sunderland have lost and we've all thought, do this lot even give a nick? They don't even look bothered about it. As for Lebris, he does give off this impression of being laid back, and I think it's important that he's like that. But I suspect he's like every good coach, and that behind the scenes, when he needs to lay the law down, I think he will. And I wouldn't be surprised if this week he's having a few conversations with individuals and perhaps giving a few individuals a little reminder of how they need to carry themselves in future.
And Gav, that point, I think there's two separate bits to it, isn't it? There's one in terms of the reaction off field, which we'll come on to in a little while, because we've got a few questions about that. But, we had Reynaldo on a yellow flying into a daft tackle before half time. We could have not only been, we were 2-0 down or 3-0 down at that point, but whatever the scoreline was, we could have very easily been down to 10 men as well, which would have compounded the whole thing and ruled out any chance of a comeback. Alderete was squaring up to somebody when the ball's flying past him and hitting the bar. And those things on the field are slightly different, aren't they, in terms of losing your head a little bit to the reaction off the field?
Yeah, I think part of it probably is to do with not getting your own way a little bit, because we've got our own way quite a lot this season, and the game just got away from us. And there will have been a lot of frustration behind some of the behaviour you saw. But I was trying to think about this quite deeply, sort of in the aftermath of the game. Like, why did this happen 3, 4, 5 times? And I mean, we can't prove it, but is the fact Xhaka's not on the pitch, barking orders, keeping check of people, a factor in that? Does Ronaldo, with him in his lug, maybe calm down a little bit more and not make rash tackles? Does Alderete even dare square up to somebody on the line when the ball's sailing over his head? All these things. Mukiele's reaction. I imagine when they got back to the dressing room, Xhaka absolutely tore strips off them for all that sort of thing. I can't imagine he'll have been happy. I can't imagine some of the coaches will have been happy with it. I was disappointed, if I'm honest. I don't mind passion. I don't mind caring. Like, when I saw Mukiele, he was clearly just frustrated because he felt like he could make a difference in the game. He had made a difference in the game. He put a great ball in for the goal we scored. So I think he was probably just frustrated about coming off. And I don't mind that to a degree. I do mind when the camera's on you for 30 seconds, watching you, rant and rave. I think that's a little bit embarrassing, but it's nothing that we need to sort of drag out. I don't think. I just think the players care, and they've shown that loads this season, that they really do care about Sunderland and they just want to win. But yeah, I think some of it got a bit silly, and I was disappointed with it, if I'm honest. I think we've praised the attitude of the players in the way that they've represented the club this year. A lot of that was not what you want to see, really. I mean, I can laugh about it now because it is actually visually quite funny watching that shot hit the crossbar while Alderete is squaring up to somebody. but at the same time, what's he doing? What's he playing at? What I mean? It's almost like, well, the game's over now anyways. I've lost my head type of thing, isn't it? And the Ronaldo one, which you talked about, you expect him to be a lot better than that because he's an older, wiser. If a young player does that, they get criticised for being inexperienced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Naive would be branded around, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And, is it a case of, because Xhaka wasn't there, several players felt the need to try and step up and be leaders and be something that they're not usually to an extreme anyways on the pitch, and maybe dialing that up a little bit caused them just to take their eye off the main prize of the game, which was to try and win it? I don't know. I reckon they were probably really pissed off because, again, just to come back to the team selection and things, looking at it was a really attacking team that we picked. It was a side when you look at it and you go, we're going to West Ham to take the game to them. And for 5 minutes or so there, we did, and we were quite decent. And it all just unfolded very quickly. And I think when you're preparing all week for a game of football, and you've got this idea in your head, right, we're going to go there, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to win the game. This is how we're going to do this, that, and the other. And then after a matter of minutes, I mean, I can't even remember when the first goal was, but what was it, like, sort of 15 minutes in or something? The game was over by, half an hour in, because 2-0 down, it just felt like we weren't going to get back into it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it was just that, Martin. I think they were just pissed off.
And, you did say that we don't want to drag it out too much, but I'm going to drag it out a little bit further because Rob Hutchison at Rob HSAFC makes a point that, it's now been twice in the last few weeks that Nordy's left the pitch and had a bit of a tantrum directed Regis Labris. And he says twice now, Nordy has left the pitch and with a spat with Regis Labris or the staff. Same at Brentford. Is there something ticking there, or is it just because he cares? I think you've talked about that, and I think it probably is the latter, but maybe it's a little misguided. Andrew, you might like this one. Paul Rackstraw at Racky SAFC says, was I the only one who liked or respects Mukiele's reaction to coming off? He shows he cares. So that's one there. That's a statement rather than anything else, but he thinks it shows that Mukiele cares about what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit it is a fine line because you don't want players losing their rags, but we always hear it. You want players who respect the badge and play for the shirt, and you want them to hurt as much as we do. So I can understand why some people see these incidents and are a little bit unsure about whether the players are channeling their energies in the right way. but I am one of those who quite enjoys the fact that the players show a bit of personality and a bit of passion. It can be a good thing to me as long as when Lebris gets into them and Lebris gets into them and just reminds them and just takes a little bit of edge off them. As long as that happens, I don't think it needs to be a bad thing. I mean, if we're still having these conversations in 4 or 5 weeks' time and the same things keep happening, then yes, that has turned into an issue. But we've not lost many games this season. We've certainly not lost many games in that fashion. So if a couple of the players are a little bit agitated, I think we can understand that.
Well, one person who certainly doesn't think any worse of Nordy is Elliot at Elliot, lots of numbers on X. He says, in my opinion, I think giving Nordy the armband is the best option for the team. So with Xhaka out, he liked Nordy's leadership there. And, you know, it's actually really, I think it's really hard for us to make a defined opinion on, because we don't know what's driving that frustration. If it's frustration at the collective performance, that's fine, and that's one thing. If it's frustration at team selection or frustration at individuals in the team or other things like that, that's not necessarily a good thing, is it? But it's impossible for us to know what was actually driving that frustration.
Exactly. We don't know the full story. And also, I don't think we know exactly why he's always wearing such heavy strapping on his hand. He's played through that for a while now. And it could just be a case of he's frustrated with his body. He looked to be in a lot of pain, and he might just have been like kicking off about that for all we know.
That was kind of my reading of it, like, because it was minutes, like a minute after he'd gone down screaming and writhing in pain, and I just thought it was a kid, right? They must have probably just thought, let's get him off, and he was maybe coming off thinking, I'm all right, man. What you bringing us off for? It's not that bad, but that was my impression of it, anyways. Maybe it was just that kind of. He felt like he could still carry on, even though he was in pain. You're right though about the strapping on his hand. That probably highlights another point, Andrew, which we don't probably make often enough about everything. The whole the overarching sort of thing that surrounds games and things like that. We don't see 99% of what goes on every day in training. We don't know, like, none of us knew Granit Xhaka was carrying a serious injury and had played through it. None of us knew that, because he was that good. You know what I mean? Probably just took pain pills or injections to get through the game and you know, maybe stretched himself. We don't see that. I see Dan Ballard limping about the pitch every week. I think he is carrying an injury, but he's playing through it. You mentioned Nordy strapping on his hand, Dennis Cirkin with his wrist. There's so much that we don't see. The decision behind giving Trey Hume the captaincy, I've seen people questioning that. We do not see who the leaders are day to day in that dressing room. You know what I mean? Like, if Trey Hume's been given the armband on a Saturday, it's probably because, other than Xhaka, he's a big leader, and they really do think he can lead the group, and that he's got respect of his teammates, and that when he speaks, people listen. We do not see that as fans. So it's very easy for us to then come out after and go, well, he shouldn't have been captain. It should have been Nordy, or it should have been Ronaldo, or it should have been Dan Ballard. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I think if you trust the manager, and I really do, I wholeheartedly trust him, when he makes a decision, I'll back him. Even if he's wrong, I'll back him, because he's earned that trust. He's earned my support. He's earned all of our support. I don't then stand pontificating about what he should have done, because generally speaking, he makes good decisions that win us games of football and win us points. So I was a little bit, again, I'm talking a lot about things that have frustrated us today, but I was just frustrated with that reaction, even, of Hume getting the armband. Maybe it didn't help him on the day, I don't know, but, like, again, I'll repeat this point. Day to day, we do not see who the biggest influences are on that group. And it's probably, you know, in the case of Trey Hume, he probably is a big influence, which is why it was an easy decision to make. You could have picked any number of players, and maybe that's a good thing. You know, we've got a lot of strong leaders in this group. There are teams in the Premier League who I watch, and I just don't see leaders on the pitch. They're completely lacking in leadership. Whereas with Sunderland, you can probably say easily 7 or 8 of the players who start regularly could be named captain, because they've got those qualities. And that is, again, a strength and something we shouldn't overlook. But yeah, I just want to make that point because, yeah, been on my mind.
No, that's right. You're only privy to a certain amount of information, and the Briss is making all of these decisions with his coaching staff based on what they're seeing minute by minute, day in, day out. And, they're doing it for the right reasons. And I just thought nobody had been taking fashion tips from Dennis Sirkin, to be honest. So there you go. We will take a short break at that point. We'll be back soon.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Whether you bond over streaming binge-worthy videos, watching sports recaps, video gaming, or by unplugging altogether, the 2026 Lincoln Nautilus Hybrid helps keep you connected throughout your journey. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Available connectivity features and functionality vary by model. Package pricing, trials, and term lengths vary by model. Video streaming and games are only available while parked.
Welcome back to Haway, the podcast. Now, Gav, we've all seen football players who've got a bit older and just can't perform in the same way on the pitch, haven't we?
There's a few that spring to mind, and you can see they can't quite reach the performance levels they did before. Players on the mind a bit, and they struggle mentally and physically.
Well, did you know that the same thing can happen for men in the bedroom? 1 in 5 men in the UK experience changes in sexual performance as they get older, and MedExpress can provide support in minutes through a free online consultation.
Yeah, MedExpress are a really good bunch. They've been one of the country's leading online pharmacies since 2013 with over 1.5 million customers. And by completing a short online consultation, they'll suggest the right treatment for your concerns, all from the comfort of your home.
Yeah, it's dead easy. Their UK-based clinical team will support you every step of the way and send your medication straight to your door. And the best bit is the whole process is online, so you don't have to go through with all of that face-to-face embarrassing stuff of visiting your GP.
Yeah, that's right. Not everyone wants to go and have the crack about this sort of stuff with their GP, and not everyone has the time either. Accessing healthcare online doesn't need to be hard with MedExpress, so visit medexpress.co.uk to check your eligibility. And if you use the code Haway, that's Haway, of course, you'll get 30% off. And you could be performing like you used to before you know it.
And let's hope Sunderland are performing like they used to before we know it, Andrew, because there was still a few things going on Saturday's game, wasn't there? And the Granit Xhaka incident was a big flashpoint. The game actually kind of got halted for a little bit, didn't it, while they sorted it all out. And Marley Hannon, at Marley Hannon on our X, says, what was your opinion on the Granit Xhaka incident? The fans looked that close to where Xhaka was, it could have ended up becoming physical, endangering both players and fans. Should the club ask questions to the Premier League/FA on this, as it could easily have become a safety issue for other teams' players? And it was a bizarre incident to start with, but I think Marley's question is about the proximity of the players and the fans. And there wasn't a great deal of room between them. At Sunderland, obviously, we have the dugout with the roof and the perspex wall between the staff and the fans, rather, don't we? But they seem to be very close together, and potentially it's a flashpoint that could happen again.
Yeah, passions are always going to run high at games, particularly at West Ham at the moment where they're struggling. I bet their fans couldn't believe how the afternoon had gone. It's funny, isn't it, how at West Ham the fans are right on top of the players in the dugout, and yet they're about, I don't know, 20 or 30 metres away from the game itself. Like with a lot of things we've said, we don't know the full story yet. We don't know what's prompted quite that an aggressive response from Xhaka. When he was younger, he could maybe fly off the handle, but nowadays he handles himself pretty well. So you have to assume that what was said was beyond just your usual Mickey taken. But yeah, that is a fair point. The the staff and the players could perhaps do with a bit of protection at the London Stadium. I think at Sunderland, not only is there the dugout and the Perspex roof, I think the club give the tickets directly behind the dugouts to fringe players, friends and family, other club staff. I think the away team certainly get like a big block of seats behind their dugout for people who are part of the wider travelling party. So that adds another buffer and means there's less chance of a flashpoint. So yeah, it probably is something that needs to just be checked and everybody be happy that there's no unnecessary risks at ground. In this particular incident, though, unless we ever find out like a transcript of what was said, we're always going to be kind of in the dark a little bit.
Well, to be honest, I'll make a significant bet on this, but I can guarantee Granit Xhaka didn't just turn around and start on someone. You can almost certainly guarantee it was a West Ham fan shouting abuse at him, and he's just turned around and reacted to it. And if that's the case, I don't mind it. Because if someone was giving me stick, I'd turn around and say something back. You know what I mean? You've got to wonder as well. I saw the West Ham fan. He's holding a baby, so what's he playing at? Like, you know what I mean? What you doing? But yeah, I think probably again more's been made of this than probably should have. And I've got mates who are Sheffield United and Rotherham fans, and I had them texting us after going, "What's going on with that?" and all that. You know what I mean? So like it was one of them things that blew up and then ended up all over social media, and then you had fans of other clubs realising it. I can only assume this, but Sunderland were getting beat. Somebody's maybe giving him a bit of stick. He's not happy even with the performance, and then he's turned around and give a bit back. It happens. Probably happens more than you realise, but again, the cameras seem to zone right in on it, and then we see footage of it, and there you go. It's all over social media, and and that's just the way of the world now, isn't it? Things blow up very quickly online, and probably now really. Can you imagine that? I remember back in the day, man, the amount of times like Peter Reid used to turn around and tell people to fuck off and things like that. You know, how many times would he have been hauled over the coals for things he said to people in the crowd? Peter Reid. So it's just one of them things, man. So it's not a big deal.
I think it's just what you get with TV cameras being everywhere, everything being captured and everything very quickly all over social media, isn't it? Now, Gav, I'm going to stick with you for this one because wingers are a big talking point. And I think it's kind of understandable why, because we've had a few sort of, I guess, chops and changes in team selection out wide, and some of that's been enforced, some that's been out of choice. Peter Crum asks, why does a Dingra seem to be sort of favour? Simon K34RS says, is Nordy our best right winger? He's put some good crosses over in the last couple of games, hasn't he? Is it time to pause the Mundle and Mayenda wing experiment and get someone who can play there? And Joe Lewins asks, is Mundle Premier League quality? We must sign a right side midfield player winger this window. And Sean Cottrell at NinjaC92 says, if we don't sign any new wingers, which two players would you play in the wings to give us a genuine threat? The big difference I could see between us and West Ham was the fact that they had Somerville and Bourne, who constantly looked dangerous, whereas our wingers didn't. And those two positions are interesting, aren't they, Gav? Because earlier in the summer, we signed Dingra fairly early on. We signed Talby fairly early on. We still tried to get, was it Lorente? I can't remember what...
Loriente, I think
Loriente.
It was pronounced, yeah.
And that was a £20 million transfer. He's an experienced player. That fell through at the last minute, allegedly on medical grounds. So the club were obviously still trying to get an experienced winger in. We obviously got Traore in towards the end. We started the season off with a Dingra and Talby playing left and right. Mundle came back from injury recently. He's got in the team. Has looked all right on occasions. Hasn't pulled any trees. Mayenda's had a bit of a stint out there recently. But, you know, if you're going to sort of analyse where we are strong and where we're weak or weaker, you can kind of pick the team. You can pick the goalkeeper. You can pick a pretty solid back four that you expect would be absolutely fine. Midfield, centrally, you can pick Xhaka, Lefebvre, Siddiqui, Diarra, 3 out of 4. Centre forward, Brian Broby's been fantastic over the past few weeks. You can go, well, he's your striker, stick him in. Out wide are the only two positions where you have a good debate and you can make a case for 4, 5, 6 different players playing out there. And there isn't a standout, is there? So How are you seeing the wing positions at present? Is this somewhere that needs to be strengthened? What's going on with the Dingra? There's a ton of things to pull out of that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think at the minute we're experimenting a little bit because of several factors. One, Talby's been at AFCON and hasn't played much. So to expect him, it hasn't started a game for Sunderland since December. To expect him to start that game on Saturday would have been tough. But then I think with a week's training under his belt and given he got a full half, I think he probably will come in for the Burnley game. I think it's going to be a really strong second half of the season for Talby. I like him. I think he out of all of the wingers is the one I really want to see more of, because I just think with more game time, he'll really improve. And tactically very switched on. Manager trusts him. He maybe doesn't take as many risks as other players, but then I would say, Mundle and Adingra take more risks on the ball, and they're more frustrating. And probably the reason why some fans are losing a bit of faith with him is because sometimes taking risks isn't the answer. And I think with Talby, he takes risks in the right moments, as we saw with his goals against Chelsea and Liverpool, shooting from range and things like that, or just running onto balls as he did for that one that Robbie set up for him at Chelsea. So I think, longer term, Talby is probably the answer down the left. There's also something which we haven't really mentioned, which is now Diarra's back. You could even move Lefebvre out there, where he played really well earlier in the season, and I wouldn't be adverse to that. So there are your two strong options out there if everybody's fit. Diarra comes into midfield. You could either put Lefebvre out there, or you could have him in front of the midfield, or you could have Talby out there. So I think we've got good options. On the right, Traore is obviously the best right-sided player we've got, but he's injured. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. I think through his career, he's had quite a lot of injuries, and we've maybe been pretty lucky that he's stayed fit this season, because when he is fit, he's a really good player. I don't hate that idea that someone mentioned about playing Nordy a bit higher, because if we're going to play a fullback on the right of midfield in that particular system, horses for courses and all that, there will be certain games where we play that system and it's needed. I probably would prefer Nordy out there, but also the point was made there that he's been our biggest creative threat, and that's been from right back. That's been because we've played. If you actually look at the part he's played and the goals we scored recently, they've been lovely team moves where we've moved it through midfield. There's sort of been one or two touches from right back into midfield. There's an overlapping run from Nordy, and then they play him into space, and then he runs onto the ball and he crosses it from wide and gets it into the box. That might not be possible if you're playing him in a slightly different role, and that's important as well. So to kind of sum things up, really, I think we are well stocked, but I would love to see another player come in. I don't know if it would be on the left, though. I think I'm quite happy with the options out there. I think between Lefebvre, Adingra, Talby, Mundle, we should have enough. Like, it would be a bit of I think when you're looking at your squad, I don't think they're going to then go, we need another left winger in. I think it's the right-hand side where we probably need another option, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we get before the end of this week. I think we haven't really been linked with wingers, but I think we do need one. I think it's fair to say creatively we're a little bit stifled at times, and the only way you can really fix that is by bringing in a better quality of player. And the one thing we don't really have is a lot of experience out wide. But again, being wise after the fact and things like that, yeah, Mayenda was poor at West Ham, but he then, before that, had a little run where he played really well, and everybody was buzzing about him, saying he should be starting games. So you can't, do you know what I mean? You can't just you can't make massive decisions based on one or two performances. I think more often than not, Elijah Mayenda is decent, and he gives us something, and he can be dropped in and out of the team. I think we just need probably a more established set of options on the wings, and that's been difficult because of AFCON, hasn't it? We've had to change things around because we lost so many players. The big one for me, by the way, just to mention it again, Adingra. I did an interview, which people can dig out, actually. It's probably worth doing. But I did an interview when we signed him with a Brighton fan who I just picked his brains on what he was like and all that. And everything he said is kind of come true. He said, he is a good player, but he's really frustrating. Sometimes he gives the ball away when there's better options to pass, and he can float in and out of games. But if you get him on form, he is a good player. And that's basically what we've seen with him. And I think the problem with Adingra is when he didn't get picked by the Ivory Coast to go AFCON, that was his chance to really nail down a place, and he hasn't. He hasn't done that at all. And aside from that goal against Leeds, I don't think he really did anything in that period. So he's got to prove himself, though. He cost us a lot of money. So at some point, he's got to come good. Otherwise, he'll be out the door. But yeah, maybe a right winger. I don't know about what you two think, but that would, if I was being picky, I would like to see maybe a right-sided player come in. But I'm relatively happy with sort of flitting between Enzo and Talby in the remainder of the season down that side.
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's the only two positions where you can't look at the squad and go, that's the nailed-on player. If everyone's fit, that's a nailed-on player who plays on the right. That's a nailed-on player who plays on the left. You can make a case for a number. I've got a curveball to throw at you, Andrew. Now, this isn't the question that's come in. This is just from M1less on the podcast. Patrick Roberts. Now, an experienced winger, plays on the right, playing fantastically well for Birmingham. He's creating, scoring. Is there an argument to say if we can't get anybody in to play on the right by Monday, is there an argument to say we're actually better off as a squad to bring him back for the rest of the season? If, I presume, these season-long loans usually have a recall clause for some point in January, and I don't know how that stands with Roberts, but you presume there is an option to bring him back. Is that worth considering?
It's definitely worth considering. And admittedly, until you threw that curveball in, it wasn't an option I'd really thought about. I love Patrick Roberts. I think he was a big part in us moving back up the leagues. So I have to be aware of that whilst I'm trying to answer this question and make sure my head overrules my heart. But it's not a ridiculous idea. I mean, there's spaces on the bench. There's spaces on the bench for players. So there might be certain games where somebody with a bit more control of the ball and a bit more experience does us some good. Did you say there he's doing well at Birmingham? I have to be honest.
He's created quite a number. He's scored a few. And I just always hark back to that season where we played with Ahmad. And I just think he plays better. You surround him with quality and you get more quality from him because he's a super intelligent football player. And I think if you put him in the same team as Lafay, Diarra, Xhaka, Siddiqui, even if you bring him off the bench for half an hour, I think he's a potentially a good option to bring off the bench.
Well, listen, M1less with a load of numbers after his name is convinced me. Pick up the phone, Speakman. Get on the blower to Birmingham and see if we can send them one of our under-21s and we'll have Roberts back, please.
Well, they were going to sign Chris Rigg for a certain amount of money last year. So you maybe give him Rigg on loan and Mundell on loan for a few weeks.
There was something else on this. The Birmingham manager, Chris Davies, was asked about whether they were going to make the move permanent about a week ago. And he kind of confirmed, yeah, we're looking to do that. So, yeah, I don't know if it is an option. I don't even know if there's a break clause in there, but I think the club are probably trying to move on from him. If we can get a little bit of money for Patrick Roberts, and the other side of this, by the way, is he's probably enjoying it at Birmingham because he's playing every week. He's not even if we brought him back, is he going to want to just come back to Sunderland to sit on the bench? I suppose there's a school of thought where you say, well, he's got no choice, he's our player. But I think Patrick Roberts did enough for the club, and the club look after players. It was the right time for him to move on. Does absence make the heart grow fonder? I don't know. I mean, I like Patrick Roberts. I think he's a cracking player, but in the Championship for us, the amount of times he just couldn't get shots away or couldn't just that final ball that it just wasn't there. Is that going to have improved because of a loan at Birmingham? I know he's done all right there, but yeah, I think we've got to move on. If anything, what I would like to see is the club just go out and spend a bit of money on a player who can be a real, that's the big thing with January, isn't it? If you're going to go out and sign players, there have to be players who are better than what you've got. And other than if you're recruiting young players, a bit like, Jocelyn Tabby, who we haven't even mentioned, by the way, he's a right-sided winger. And the club may well look at him and think after a period of sort of rehab and bedding in and stuff, they might look at him and go, actually, he's the difference maker off the bench. I don't know. But my point of view would be, let's look forward. Let's go out and buy somebody instead.
And you've led me very nicely, Gavin, transfers there. John Harrison at SAFC25_John says, based on the progress made since August, are the squad and the fans correct to expect a couple of high-quality additions in this transfer window? And Matty at Matty_Oliver says, does this last week of the transfer window make or break the season? Thought we'd have brought in some more players to help us with a top 10 finish. But after the West Ham game and the lack of movement in the window, it has me a little worried, especially if Xhaka is out for 6 to 8 weeks. Now, there's a level of expectation, isn't it, that kind of naturally comes with us performing well, getting points on the board, winning games and all that sort of stuff. And people hark back to the interview that I think Kira Louis-Dreyfus did before the Everton game on Sky, didn't he, where he's talking about the plans for January and how they'd be affected if we were looking up rather than down and all that sort of stuff. I don't think the transfer window is going to make or break the season anytime soon. I think the club have shown over the past 3 or 4 years that they are pragmatic, I guess is the right word, isn't it, in terms of transfers. That they've got players who they want. They'll bring players in at the right time. They won't be rushed into things. Look how long it took us to get a bloody striker in, for God's sake. We waited for the right thing. But in terms of the expectation, as John's asked, are the squad and fans correct to expect some high quality additions this transfer window?
I think the point you made there about Kirill appearing on TV and saying we were going to go for it and try and push for a top 10 finish is fine. I would have to read exactly what he said, whether that was directly referring to transfer business or not, but that was sort of my impression of it. But again, you've got to look back at virtually every transfer window under this regime, particularly in the January. We tend to wait for the deals to come, and if actually across the board, if you look at the sort of in general the transfer window so far, it's been pretty quiet, and I think that's mainly because a lot of clubs are just waiting for other clubs to make decisions on players. And it's always the case. The last couple of days are mad because the dominoes start to fall and then everybody starts moving, and players that you didn't even know were available start becoming available and things like that. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably more the case. I think we're just waiting for something to happen. And let's be honest, we're not in a rush. Like we're being really picky here. We would like another right winger. We would like another midfield player, but we're being picky. Like if Sunderland stuck with the same squad that we've got right now for the rest of the season, we'd still be in a good place. This squad has got us into the top 10 of the Premier League. I don't think we've actually, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think we've dropped out of the top half of the league yet. So this is already a very, very good squad. And I was actually thinking about this yesterday, and it won't be what people want to hear, but could there be a school of thought that thinks actually we don't need to sign anybody because we're already doing pretty well as it is? The club may well have changed their thinking on things.
Well, this is interesting. Michael Dunn at Dunny Lots of Numbers says, how many do we need in before the window shuts? And I think there's a huge difference between need and want. So I don't think we need anybody in. It would be nice to get another right winger in, as we've talked about. And there's a couple of questions that we'll come on to in terms of getting a midfield player in to stand in for Granit Xhaka. It would be lovely if we did. We don't need one because we've got a squad that can cope with it. And I think the club's transfer business this January, in this last week of the transfer window, will not deviate at all from what we've seen over the past few years. They'll wait, and if a player becomes available who they want, and then get them in for a deal that makes sense right now, they'll do the business. If not, they'll put it to one side, they'll go back in the summer. They won't be chasing somebody and paying over the odds to try to get somebody in. They won't be signing somebody who's 9th or 10th down the list just to get somebody in, because the squad can actually cope with an awful lot. One of those players, Gav mentioned, Andrew, players who become available towards the end of the transfer window. And Tom Perez, at Thomas Perez, asks, can we attract a Harry Wilson type or get actual Harry Wilson? Now that we've had some success, the recruitment of players from other leagues was brilliant, but here's the next step to buy established quality from other mid-table Premier League squads. And Wilson's an interesting one. He was linked with Leeds in the summer. I think he almost joined Leeds, and that move fell through. He's out of contract in the summer, I believe. So this is a point in time where Fulham can get some money for Wilson. But he's playing so well for them. He's scoring goals. He's doing everything for them at present. Is he a player who you'd like us to go after? And also, what do you think of this notion about the next step in our evolution in terms of transfers being to pick off players for our competition, essentially?
That's a really interesting point because, the club have moved their sights as things have progressed and started looking in different markets. And you'd like to think we are going to come to a point soon, if not now, where we are looking at established Premier League players. My fear to that is that comes at a premium, or you're then battling it out for players who have let their contracts run down. And if you're doing that, you're up against 4 or 5 other really good options. Wilson seems to be on fire at the moment, and he's been pretty good before that as well. So somebody like him, I'd love to see that happen. I think that would be a big statement of intent. I just think that if you do start looking to try and do that deal, it's perhaps going to be a little bit harder to pull off. And I don't like saying this because I love Sunderland to bits. I think we're the best club in the world. I'm not sure if other outside people would match up with me on that viewpoint just yet. So we might not be able to do those deals right now. But when we start doing that type of move, that will really show that we're a big player now.
And it's going to be an interesting one because he is 29 in March. He's going to, this is going to be the last big contract you'd think he's going to sign. It's going to set him up for the rest of it, isn't it? So it's going to be a big decision for him. Now, I suspect he will wait until the summer and choose from an array of options. Finally, on transfers, Gav, I think we've touched upon this to a large extent, but Roy the Roker said, not sure if it came up last week, but perhaps even more pertinent after the West Ham game. I wonder, with Dan Neil sadly likely to leave and Guendouzi joining Fenerbahce, do we need to find another strong central midfielder to cover Xhaka and even succeed him in time? And, I think there's one thing theoretically wishing that we had a player capable of standing in for Granit Xhaka. There's another thing in reality of finding somebody who is good enough to stand in for Granit Xhaka and also not play when Xhaka's fit for the next couple of seasons. Is it more of a case of using the squad to cope with the absence, or do you think there is a potential need to bring in another strong central midfield player?
I do think we need another centre midfield. I thought that before Xhaka got injured, because my reasoning was if he does get injured, we need to be able to cope with it. But the difficulty here is that players of Granit Xhaka's ability are few and far between, and they certainly aren't available in January when everybody would like a player like that. So, I mean, just to refer back to the point made prior to that as well, Harry Wilson, he's playing in the form of his life for a team who are competing with us. They're not going to sell him to us. They're not going to sell him to anybody they're competing with. I just think, unfortunately, not in January anyways. In the summer, it's a completely different case, isn't it? But January is a very difficult window to operate in because it's often said it's a seller's window. It's, if your club's selling a player, like we are at the minute, it appears that Wilson Isidore is available, and you're seeing bids of 25 million euros from Paris FC. Like in the summer, those bids just don't happen. You're not getting 25 million pound bids for him because teams are a little bit more desperate in January. Guendouzi felt nailed onto me. That was the name just mentioned there. Felt absolutely nailed onto me. But from when that was first mooted to now, maybe things have changed. Maybe maybe he's looked at it and gone, actually, Sunderland have got a really strong midfield. They've got the record signing coming back. Is it the best option for me? I can go to Turkey, a little bit warmer, might even be paying a little bit more. They're playing in Europe. Like, these are factors what players consider. Guendouzi will be thinking, if I go to Sunderland and I'm not starting every week, there's my chances of getting in the World Cup squad out the window. If I go to Fenerbahce and I'm playing in Europe and I win a title, I've got a far better chance of playing or getting in that France squad for the World Cup than I do if I go to Sunderland or another similarly placed club. Again, something I said earlier about not knowing the full facts of everything. It's the case with this, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, the point is true, though. I think we probably do need another 6 in the squad. Clearly, you know, Hertruida, for as much as we like him, clearly, you know, longer term, maybe he's not seen as the option in there. So, like, what do? Do you go out and sign a young player who's probably a little bit more happy to sit in reserve, or what? That's the difficulty. It's and you mentioned the striker before, Martin, about the situation where it just seemed to take us forever to find a striker. But if the ideal candidate isn't available, then maybe you just don't panic. You don't just go and sign anybody. You wait until the summer. And it goes back to what I said before. Maybe we're happy with the options in there now that Diarra's back, because we have got strong options. You know, Xhaka, Diarra, Siddiqui, Lafay, and Hertruida. That's a strong roster of midfielders. So I hope we get the player in that we want, but I couldn't tell you who they are. Like, it's difficult, isn't it? Really, to pinpoint who that might be. And my suspicion is we'll probably do what we've done with the wide position and bring in a youngster who's maybe a little bit more happy to sit on the bench, but is one for the future. Maybe another Siddiqui type, you know, somebody who's doing really well in a lesser league, who would be over the moon to get the opportunity to play for Sunderland. Maybe that's the next step. I don't know, but tough in it. I think that's the point. It's tough to find the right players and get them in at a good price and not panic, more importantly.
No, not panicking is absolutely crucial. And I do keep reassuring myself with the fact that after a pre-season game, before we signed Xhaka, I can't remember if it was the three of us actually on a pod after a pre-season friendly, but we just watched Siddiqui play in the deep role, Lafay play to one side of him and Diarra to the other side of him. And we were going, Jesus Christ, those three in midfield are going to be superb together. And those three actually haven't played in midfield together yet. And we're almost in February. So I think the three of them can form a really effective midfield in Xhaka's absence. And we kind of take it as it comes from there. What we will be taking as it comes is a very short break. We'll have a couple of ads. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes to talk all about our away form and a couple of questions that set us up for the Burnley game on Monday. So we'll see you soon.
So what do you want?
What do I want? I want to use my degree for good. And in general.
I kind of meant like a muffin or a latte.
I want a job with a generous work-from-grocery-store policy.
You are here a lot.
Debbie, please, I'm working.
I want a job that will change the world.
Ma'am, this is a drive-thru.
And some nuggets.
With LinkedIn's new AI-powered job search, you can find roles that match your unique skills so you can dare to discover more. Visit linkedin.com/jobs to learn more.
Every sip of Coca-Cola brings you closer to the excitement of the FIFA World Cup 26. Because nothing compares to the joy. So grab a Coke and drink in the FIFA World Cup 26. No purchase necessary. 13 plus in 50 U.S. states and D.C. with a web-enabled device. Ends March 1st with 8 entry periods. Rules at cokeurl.com/soccer rules.
Welcome back to Haway, the podcast. Now, our away form, Andrew, has been much talked about. And I think this has got a bit of sort of press coverage over the past few weeks, especially, hasn't it? And Rob Ellison Davison at Rob SAFC fan says, what are we missing away from home that will change our fortunes? The same left-footed right winger we are missing in general. And Ian _Crow 3 says, thoughts on the difference between us home and away? Yes, there's a difference, but Chelsea, Liverpool, Everton, FA Cup, even Brighton were good away performances. Also at home, we are expected to be on top, which is the same for everybody else, so surely there will be a difference. And Michael Dunn at Dunny, lots of numbers, says just how concerning is the away form. 5 goals all season. He's chalked a goal off. We've got 6. But I was looking at the away form earlier, right? So just for context, I think it's really important that we don't get carried away by the last 2 away league performances. I think that's been Brentford and obviously West Ham on Saturday, hasn't it? Which have both been bad performances. So I think it's important that we don't tarnish the whole season away from home with those 2 poor performances. Now, our away form this season stands like this. We've won 2, drawn 4, lost 6. We've only scored 6 goals, and we've conceded 17. We've got 10 points from the 12 games that we've played away. Now, that 10 points is the same as Newcastle have got away from home. It's the same as Brighton have away from home. It's the same as West Ham have away from home. It's better than Brentford, Bournemouth, Leeds, Burnley, and Wolves away from home. So, for a newly promoted club, I would say there's an argument to say our away form's actually kind of par for the course. We're doing all right. Yes, look, goal scoring isn't our strongest point away from home. We can all see that and understand that. But, and again, if you kind of take out the last couple of games where we've conceded 3 in each, we actually haven't done that badly in terms of goal concession away from home either. We've looked fairly solid apart from those last 2 games. On the flip side, we've scored 18 at home and conceded only 9. Only Man City and Arsenal have conceded fewer goals than us at home. So defence is a strength. Is there a danger that we kind of get carried away with this away form and lack of goals, and we just go, yes, it would be nice to score a few more goals, but essentially any point that we pick up away from home this season, a good point, and we chuck them in the bag and we get on with it, or should we have bigger ambitions than that?
I think down as we get further down the line, away form's going to need to improve. But as you've pointed out, there's a whole batch of clubs in the Premier League who'd be quite happy to improve their away form. I just think it's a really simple case of the Premier League's bloody hard. We're going to teams who've got quality players, and at the moment, we're not quite getting as many wins as we'd like. I think we're still, from the stats you've said there, we've still come away from 50% of our away games with at least a point. So that's pretty decent for me. We haven't scored a load of goals recently. And again, in a perfect world, you'd like to see that improve. But that wasn't the reason why we've lost to Brentford and we've lost to West Ham. It was actually because we've had rare off days in defence that we've ended up losing those games. So, we could very easily have come away with a couple more points. I can see why people are a little bit concerned, but almost if our home form hadn't been as good as it is, people probably wouldn't even notice that the away form was bad, if you know what I mean. If we were 15th or 16th, people would be more than happy with our away results. So for me, you always want to see improvements in every department. I just think it's a result of the fact we're in a really tough league, and any away point you get is going to be a hard-earned point.
And Gav, it's, again, we'd all love to see us score more goals away from home. We'd all love to see us pick up more points away from home. But the goal scoring thing in particular, we've seen all the way through, haven't we? Labrissa's Sunderland side doesn't score that many goals. I think there was only a handful of occasions last season where we scored 3 or 4 in a game, wasn't it? We don't tend to score a ton of goals. Now, yes, look, you'd like to score more than 6 away from home so far this season, but Burnley have scored 13 away from home, so they've scored more than double what we have away from home. They've picked up 5 points away from home this season. So scoring goals doesn't automatically equal a win, does it? And do you think that's just a symptom of Labris trying to get the side set up to be solid away from home, to limit the chances for the opposition, pick up points where we can, and it's I guess it's just a symptom, or it's in keeping, isn't it, with what he's done with us home and away, really, since he's been here?
Yeah, well, you could say that on Saturday he tried to pick a more attacking team than he has done recently, and we got caught. We conceded 3 goals in the first half. So it is very difficult to get that balance right. I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to find that balance, because he's conceded himself. He's been asked about it in press conferences and after games about the goal scoring. And he said it's not for the want to try, and we want to score more goals, but getting that balance right is crucial. And, the balance was too far in one direction probably on Saturday, because we went 4-4-2. We had 2 strikers up top. We had, Lefay playing centre midfield, who is primarily an attacking player. We had Siddiqui in there, who as we saw against Palace, you benefit from him pushing on sometimes. Gets our assist for the Brobby goal. So for me, it was a pretty attacking side, and it just didn't work. And that's what he'll be trying to figure out. Like, how can I get this bit right, particularly away from home, where we're a little bit more attacking, but we aren't so attacking that we concede a load of goals. And the last 2 away games in the league, we've conceded 3 in each. So clearly we're not getting that part right at the minute. But I've got no real issues with the way that we set up. I think I've loved it this season, the way we've played. And I think, I can't remember who said it now. Somebody said it on a pod recently, but the point basically was it's a lot easier to win 1-0 than it is 3-2 or 4-3. Like, you still only get 3 points for winning. You know what I mean? So if you're going to win 1-0, then it's probably a bit easier than going all out. And from an entertainment perspective, yeah, you would probably enjoy seeing a lot more goals, more free-flowing football. But even then, I would say, the goal at West Ham was a brilliant goal. That was a real team goal. Both goals against Palace were excellent moves, like what we pulled off. The Lefay goal against Everton in the Cup was a really good goal. The Brobby goal away at Tottenham was a really good goal. So we're scoring good goals. We're playing good. We're not just playing like crap football. The goal that Dingra scored against Leeds, there's another one. Excellent pass from Xhaka and a great finish. So it's not the quality of the attacking play. It's probably the frequency, I would say. And we don't create a lot of chances. And maybe that, again, to feed into something we just talked about, maybe that'll come from signing a top winger in the window. I don't know. But it's tough, innit? Like, I am really on the fence here and refusing to get off. But, like, what's he supposed to do? Do people want to see us play like a more attacking team, but then we'll be complaining more about the goals we concede? I just think, I actually think the style thing's something that you address in the summer. It's not a January thing. I've got no real issue with the way we're doing it. Yeah, you've got to tweak things, but
I think you've raised a really important point there, Gav, because on Saturday he did try to change it. See, he went 4-4-2 for the first half. Mayenda was pretty much playing in front alongside Brobby. And we were very, very easy to play against. West Ham kind of got through us. And yeah, a couple of their goals, there might be goals that they only convert, 1 in 20, 1 in 30, 1 in 50 times. But they still got through us and we made it fairly easy for them. And actually, I think it's really important that we don't make a mountain out of a molehill with all this sort of stuff. I think the team, the way it's set up, it's set up to really get points at Premier League level. It's not set up to entertain. A famous man once said, if you want to entertain, go to the circus. And I kind of buy into that to a large extent with football. I get entertained by us being well structured and defensively organised and making it hard for players to play against and not letting the likes of Arsenal and Man City walk all over us. That's my entertainment. I'd much rather see that than us lose 4-3 and play a really spectacular game. We've seen sides get relegated with a terribly low number of points for trying to do that, haven't we? And I think it's a matter of building on what we've got and making small tweaks and getting better quality players or developing the players who we have in the squad in those wide areas to deliver those moments of magic more frequently. And I think that's the improvement that you make. The rest of the side set up incredibly well. I think if you can kind of unlock something else on either flank or both flanks, will be absolutely spot on. One person who doesn't necessarily agree with that sort of sentiment, though, is Ahmad Makam. Now, Ahmad Makam could be Ahmad Diallo, but he's Ahmad Makam because he wants to see the consequences reflected in the lineup next week. Starting Hume, which we will, sends the wrong message. Away from home, we need to start seeing a genuine attempt to win games rather than going for 0-0. It is broke, so fix it. Now, Andrew, I'm going to come to you on this because that is a completely different sentiment to what we've been talking about for the past hour or so. Do you think we need to see consequences in the lineup? Do people need to pay the price for a poor performance? Or is it actually not down to the players in so much as Lebris will take it on the chin? He admitted after the game that he made mistakes. He made an admittance of it by his triple sub at half time. So is it Lebris that's going to carry the can for that? Do players need to carry the can and be punished for it? How do you think we'll see the response going into the next match against Burnley?
I think there might be changes against Burnley, but there would have been the potential for changes against Burnley had we drawn or had we won. Listen, I get it. We're all hurting. Nobody likes losing to a team who are that bad at home and who've been in the relegation zone for as long as they have. Nobody enjoys that. And it's that classic thing. It is a game of opinions. People are entitled to different opinions to me. I'm not saying I'm necessarily right. It's just how I feel. But I think phrases like punishing players or people need to pay the price, I think that's a little bit dangerous because of the wider context. We still don't know if this West Ham game was just a bad day at the office or whether it was a sign of larger scale issues. Labris will have a better idea of that and will take the emotion out of the decisions. You could even say that it would send the wrong message if he did now drop a load of players. Anybody who was slightly off colour against West Ham could still point to a load of other games where they've played well. And do you necessarily get the best out of your squad if you rip everything up as soon as there's a sign of trouble? So, I mean, at full time on Saturday afternoon, if you'd asked me, there probably would have been a part of me wanting to go into the deep end and go in 2-footed and say, oh, everything's rubbish. Everything at Sunderland's crap. Everybody needs selling. We need a whole new set of players in. But I think that would have just been a reaction to not enjoying seeing us lose. Going forward, bit of patience, a bit of understanding, couple of changes where needed. Okay. But beyond that, we don't need to start stressing and throwing our toys out the pram just yet.
I think the players, to a man, Gav, have enough credit in the bank that we can stick with them and trust them, and we know that Labris will make the right decision come next Monday in terms of team selection. But if you turn your attention to the team selection, I know it's a week off the game, so things might change and people might return to fitness, injuries might happen, new signings might arrive. But if we sat here now looking at that Burnley game, Ryan at Lord Pidge says, with Xhaka being out, can we play a midfield three of Siddiqui, Diarra and Lefay? And Steve Richards at Stitcho's Steve offers his lineup, and this is the lineup I would pick for the Burnley game if we're going to pick it today. So, Gav, how do you see the team lining up on Saturday? I'll tell you what Stitcho, Steve and me think after you've given your views.
Well, in terms of new signings, I don't think it's the way we do it where we would just chuck one in. I think if we sign anybody between now and Burnley and they're signed in time, I don't know how it works because we're playing Monday. By the way, that's crap. Transfer window closes on Monday the same time we're playing. But
ridiculous,
would we have to have a player registered by Friday for them to be eligible?
I think it's like 24 hours before the game rather than before the weekend's fixtures.
Right. I'm not sure how it works, but regardless, I think if we've got someone in early enough, they'll be on the bench. They wouldn't be starting the game unless we do actually go out and sign Dembele, and then maybe he's too good not to start.
If Harry Wilson arrives, like it's been suggested, you've got somebody who's playing regularly in the Premier League who can step in. Or Patrick Roberts returns from Birmingham, who knows?
Absolutely. So if I was picking the team right now, it would be Robin Roofs goal. I would have Ronaldo in at left back. Yeah, he had a stinker at West Ham, but he's brilliant and he hasn't had many of them. The back four would be a back four, wouldn't be a back five. I would have Alderete, Ballard and Mukiele. The midfield would be Hertrauda at the foot of it, with Diarra and Siddiqui either side of him. I would have Enzo Lefay on the left. Then on the right, I would go with Eliza Mayenda and then Brian Broby up front. That would be my 11.
You're one off what me and Stitcho Steve think. Any advances, Andrew?
Well, I think it's 2-2 because as Gav was going through the team there, I wouldn't mind seeing that lineup. So unless yourself and Stitcho Steve are about to blow us away, I might stick with Gav's suggested 11.
Yeah, no, I think it's predictably, as we've talked about during the podcast, it's one of the wing positions because they're the ones that are most debatable. Robin Roofs, Nordy, Ballard, Alderete, Ronaldo, Hertrauda, Diarra, Siddiqui, Lefay, Broby, and Talby. So Talby on the right wing rather than Mayenda is the only change there. But Stitch or Steve does make the comment, unless we sign a cracking right winger before then, which I think we would potentially agree with if they are playing regularly and their name is Dembele. Final one, Andrew, for you. Jack Asprey asks, are you confident we'll bounce back against Burnley? The players reacted well after the Brentford game, and I'm confident they can do it again. How are your confidence levels?
Why, aye, man. Of course we'll bounce back. I mean, we've bounced back every single time this season. No reason why we can't do it again. Hopefully West Ham was just a crap day that we soon forget about and move on from. And listen, man, we could be playing Manchester City and Arsenal in the same day, and I'd still fancy us to pick something up. So, yeah, let's move on. Let's have a good week on the training ground, and let's go again against Burnley and give them hell.
And that sounds like a very good idea to me, and it sounds like a very good place to wrap this one up. So thank you very much, Gav.
Cheers, mate. It was good, that.
And thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, Gav's right. It was good fun. Thanks very much.
And thank you to everyone who sent questions in. Don't forget to look out for the social media call out on X. We'll probably do it later on in the week because we're playing Burnley, obviously, on Monday, as we've talked about. And there'll be a whole load of stuff, hopefully, to talk about after that game and the transfer window closing as well. So keep an eye out on X for that call out. Or else, if you have a question and you'd like us to put it in the bag for next week, email us at howaythepodcastsafc@gmail.com. We will be back tomorrow with another podcast. I'm not sure what we've got lined up for Wednesday, Gav, but I'm sure we'll come up with something depending on what's going on.
I'm not sure myself. We'll work it out.
We'll figure it out. There will be something for you on Wednesday.
Surely it'll be a news podcast, lads, when we've gone and broken our transfer record or something along those lines. It's got to be.
That's penciled in for Thursday, isn't it? So,
oh, my mistake. Is that when Dembele arrives? Is it Thursday when he's turning up?
That's Dembele Day. Yes, that's right. And of course, we are joking. But we will leave it there. We will see you tomorrow for another episode of Haway the Podcast. Until then, it is goodbye from us.